So it is time to improvise. Good morning, everyone. So today is Thursday, September 10th, 2020, and I'm coming to you from my classroom. And I didn't even get a chance to put on makeup because we just found out that the platform that we have been using for the past almost 2 weeks and have been trained in the last 3 weeks or so, it's no longer available to us because the district decided not to move forward with it. So it is time to improvise. I just came quickly in the classroom this morning and I'm getting ready to email my team some alternate activities to do with our students today. And we now have to make sure we tell our families that we're not meeting on the new platform. We're meeting through Zoom and through Microsoft Teams. I'll figure out when to put on makeup, but right now the priority is getting these resources out to my 4th grade teachers. And of course, I'll share with you what I come up with. It's like we have to plan on a whim now and do it off the seat of our pants. So let me go ahead and get to this, and I'll catch you up with everything that has been happening since I last left you last Tuesday. It has been a whirlwind, everyone. Last I left you, I met with my students for about an hour. We read 14 Cows for America. We watched the Brain Pop video for 9/11. We had a discussion, and then I sent them off to work on Prodigy math. So that's what they're doing. And then I met with my grade level for an hour. We met from 11 to 12:05 right now. And I just picked up my lunch from the office. Chipotle. Yes. So now I have like 15 minutes to eat, and then I'm meeting with my students again at 12:35 for our science and social studies lesson. And then we're gonna end the day with music. So I have to facilitate that Zoom meeting with the music teacher to make sure that she's in and ready to go. I'll make her the host, and then I'll go into my planning hour because I have a lot of planning to do. Anyway, I'll catch you up more as the day progresses, probably at the end of the day. And as you can tell, I never had the opportunity to put on makeup. It's been go, go, go. And basically my grade level meeting was full of lots of tutorials on how to use Teams, how to access Whiteboard on Zoom, how to use Prodigy, how to access the electronic eBooks for our textbooks, which I'm thinking that's what we're gonna go back to. So back to Wonders, back to Go Math, back to Elevate Science, back to TCI Social Studies. I think the email they sent was very vague. So I'm still waiting for more, clarity on what we're supposed to do. All right, so let me go eat and I'll let you know how everything else goes. All right, everyone, long time no see. It is now the end of the day, way past the end of the day. The students had music at the end of the day from 2:05 to 3:05, so that was my planning, and I went to check in with Ms. Guzman. I just came back, and it's 4:20. We were doing mini PDs, trying to teach each other how to do different things and use different technology tools that we now need to use since we're not using K-12 anymore. Again, tutorial videos coming soon. And yeah, I need to get out of here because the building's going to close in 10 minutes. But I will catch you up once I get in the car of all the different things that happened today. And I'll give you a glimpse of what my lesson plans look like for today since it was so impromptu, and what I'm planning to do tomorrow. So I'll probably do that tomorrow because I'll just make this into like a 2-day vlog and take you along with me for the adventure. So let me go to my car and I'll catch you up on what happened today. Okay, everyone. So let me just take a deep breath and let it out because I'm exhausted. Today was such a whirlwind and I just felt like everything was going super fast and I just had to adjust to all the changes, but we survived. We had a good time with the students. All my students were able to show up to all of our live class sessions today, so I am very proud of them and I'm so grateful for that. Like I mentioned, I don't remember what I said earlier, but we read 14 Cows for America this morning for our ELA. For math, I created Prodigy accounts for my students. Prodigy, if you don't know, is an online math game that goes over your state standards. So for me, I love it because they have my Florida state standards, and because we were going over multiplication statements this week, multiplicative comparison statement this week, I was able to create a little assessment for them to do 10 questions so that as they went into Prodigy, they were able to answer those questions and I can assess how well they understood that standard. So I was happy to do that. They love it. It's a game. They're like little wizards, and they're exploring a map, and then they're challenging different other like NPCs in the game. NPCs are non-playable characters, and when they challenge them, they go into like wizard battle, and the battle is to solve math problems and questions. So I love it, and it's free. I created all my student accounts. I share them through Dojo with the parents. I emailed all the students their personal login accounts as well. So that's what we did for ELA and math. And then after lunch, we met for science and social studies. So in science, we reviewed the scientific method, and we also went over the different tools that scientists use. And yeah, for social studies, we went over physical maps and the features of physical maps and what we can learn from them. We even went into Google Earth to look at Florida and where we live and see the colors and how that's a physical map. And it was a lot of fun. So they really, really enjoyed the lessons. And then, of course, they ended the day with music. So it was a full day of learning, even though things were kind of last minute changed on us. But we are flexible. We can go with the flow and make it happen and still produce meaningful learning opportunities for the students. I'm not gonna lie though, I am exhausted, and I'm going home now, and I will be figuring out what I'm going to do with them tomorrow, and then also planning for next week. So it seems that yes, we are going to go back to using the online version of Wonders. So we're back to using Wonders, we're back to using Go Math, we're back to using Elevate Science, which is a Pearson textbook, and we have the TCI Social Studies curriculum for Florida studies. So we're going back to all of that and figuring it out. Our district, as we speak, is working on pacing guides to help us pretty much get caught up with where we need to be and let us know where they want us to focus our instructional attention on. So yeah, we just have to be patient and see what happens, and even that can change. I may say, okay, we're going back to Wonders, and then come next week, no, we're not, we're doing something else. We'll see. But for now, I'm going to plan from what I know and what I can have my students work on. I'm familiar with Microsoft Teams. I used it last spring. I know I haven't even shared with you all what I did with that. Hopefully, I'll be able to share a little bit more about that as I go along. But I'm comfortable with Microsoft Teams and creating assignments within there and sharing resources and documents and videos and files with my students. Microsoft Teams is just similar to Google Classroom, if I can compare the two. It's just our district is not a Google district, so we don't use Google Classroom, we use Microsoft Teams. So that's what I'm using in order to share information with the students. I put notes on there, I put PowerPoints, I put video tutorials, I create assignments. That's where they turn in the assignments. So yeah, going back to that, and Zoom. We're going back to using Zoom for our live teaching sessions. So that's what I wanted to catch you up on. After my meeting this morning with my students, I know I mentioned we spent like a whole hour with my grade level team just trying to figure out what we were going to do for tomorrow. Some of the teachers are not used to using Microsoft Teams and how that works, because you know, if you haven't used a platform forever and you're using it now for the first time, it's obvious not going to be such an easy transition. You have to learn how it works. You have to learn how you can accomplish what you seek out to accomplish. So it takes time. So I'll be making video tutorials for my team and posting it in our grade level Microsoft team for them to watch and review whenever they need to. So it's been a quite interesting couple of weeks. Not the smoothest, start to our school year, but what can we do? We're in the middle of a pandemic. We're just trying to do the best that we can. And please, if you are a teacher in my district, you are not alone. We are all trying to do what we can. Give yourself grace, like I said last week. If you're a parent in our district, please make sure you give yourselves grace and also your teachers grace as well, because we're not the ones that make the decisions. That's higher up people that make the decisions. We're the ones that have to implement the decisions that are made to the best of our abilities. And sometimes we don't have the proper training that is required to implement something like this, because not everyone in the district has been trained on Microsoft Teams. So we're literally learning, a lot of us, as we go. So yeah, It's an adventure for sure. But I will catch you up tomorrow on what my lesson plans are for tomorrow, what we end up doing, and hopefully by then I should also have an idea what I'm doing with lesson plans for next week. That's a mouthful. I'm exhausted. I'll see you tomorrow. Hello, friends. So welcome to Friday, September 11, 2020. It's the end of the day because I haven't been able to pick up the camera. My day has been go, go, go since I got to school this morning. So I wanted to show you everything that we did today, but in all honesty, I'm exhausted. I may show you next week, or if I go home, I may insert a video clip of the things that I did maybe here. So here is a rundown of what we ended up doing this week, which was our first instructional week of the school year, since the previous week the students were training on K-12, which of course, as you know from the video, we no longer have access to. So we literally had access to K-12 on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, and then Thursday morning, we no longer had access. So some of the information I'm going to show you comes from K-12, or a brief introduction of what we were doing on K-12. And then I had to, of course, change my plans as of Thursday morning because a lot of the things I couldn't use anymore on K-12. So on Tuesday, as always, we go over our class agreements. So this is just a slide that we go over every day to remind the students what our online class agreements are. And I always go ahead and show them the schedule. So this over here happens to be the schedule for Tuesday. And we started that day with science, and then they had specials. We had a morning meeting, math, lunch, and then we went into our ELA block at the end of the day with social studies. And this is how the rest of our week will look. So, of course, we started with science, and we were going over the properties of science, so the scientific method. And I'm going to just run through this and just go as quickly as possible. I did do an answer garden where they kind of answered what they already knew about the scientific method. And later on in the video, I'll share a little bit more about answer garden. And of course, we went over a study jams video, and they completed the statement, "I used to think, but now." And they took notes in their notebook. And this is just a background of a notebook paper. And I just put a text box over it and had the students pause on this page to write their notes. Now, if they didn't have enough time writing their notes, I saved this page as an image. And in our Microsoft Teams, they would have that available so that they can complete their notes on their own at a later time. So they had to read this book on K-12, which is S is for Scientists. It's an alphabet book. And from that, they needed to understand what JEXCHUM stood for, which is an acronym for different things that scientists did. And we went ahead and answered that in our Padlet. So over here is them taking notes on what JEXCHUM meant as they read the book. And then, of course, it was time for our morning meeting and then math. We had a math problem of the day that we went over together. And we went over the standards, which we have been going over multiplication comparisons, using division as well. We went over the learning goals. K-12 had the second 60-second math, and they also had it for reading, which was really great. But again, we no longer have access to this. So it's just going over some problems to go over multiplication comparison statements, and then taking notes in their notebook and going over a couple of problems. And of course, what they ended up needing to do after my live lesson with them. And these are actually the slides that I would use to teach the lessons. Our lunch every day is the same. And after lunch, we went over ELA, which is our English Language Arts block, where we were going over key details, theme, and summary. So I let the students know the materials they needed. I introduced them to it. They watched the video on Cinderella because for this unit, we were going over the different versions of Cinderella, starting with the Chinese version of Cinderella, Yishen. And yes, we did take a spelling pretest, which was interesting. But I did teach the students about what theme was. They took notes on it. And then, of course, we took our spelling test. And we watched a 60-second English on Cinderella and answered some questions about, Yishen before we read so that we set the purpose for reading. And the students took notes on the words that they needed to know, which I went ahead. This was me going a little bit above and beyond. I like putting pictures along with the words so that the students have a visual picture or representation of what the word meant as it is used in the story. So I did that for all of the words that they were going to encounter as they read the story. So, yeah, we just went over all of these words, and they even had a practice on wordwall.net so that they can practice their understanding of the words. We would build background on the Tang Dynasty and Chinese culture because they were going to read Yeshen. And then we read Yeshen, which is here, and did a little check-in afterwards. And we talked about theme, and the students took notes on topic versus theme. And of course, they had an assignment, which is they needed to write about the theme of Yeshen. So that's pretty much a rundown of what we did that day. As far as ELA goes, in social studies, we have been working on getting to know the different social sciences. So getting to know historians and taking notes on that, geographers, economists, and of course, political scientists. And they took notes on each of those. And then they had an assignment that was due by the end of that week, which they continued even though we didn't have access to K-12, because it was something that I put together on Microsoft Teams. And it was to look something like this. They had to divide their page into fourths and draw a picture that represented each of those social scientists. So that moves us on to Wednesday. And again, we went over our class agreements, the schedule. And in ELA, we went ahead and went over the Mexican Cinderella. So then we started reading about that, recalling Yeshen, going over words that they would see in the Mexican Cinderella, taking notes on that, and building background so that they understood. We went over the different parts of the story that make up the summary of the story as well. So what's the summary? And they actually listened to Adelita by Tommy de Paula, which is the Mexican Cinderella story. We did a reading check-in and went over how to write an effective summary versus an ineffective summary. And of course, they had to go ahead and follow that up with a summary of the Mexican Cinderella and practicing the words that we learned. In math, again, we had a math problem of the day that we did together. We were still going over multiplication comparisons, and we practiced a couple of problems with that. And in science, we continue going over the nature of science. We did a little scientific methods wrap and reviewed the different scientific method processes. So we watched a video from BrainPop, and the students also had this book on the tools that scientists use. And again, I went over it briefly with them, but then they lost access to this book. So I went ahead and continued doing that with the students. I did do a Flipgrid assignment where the students had to film a video going over 3 scientific tools that they learned about and explained how scientists use it. And in social studies, again, we kept going over the parts of a map. So after we learned about the social sciences, we started going over the parts of a map, and they had to read this book and answer questions and also draw a neighborhood map, which is an assignment that I carried over as well. So Thursday is when everything happens. So I'm going to show you some slides of what I plan to do for each subject, but then things kind of changed, of course, because we no longer had access to K-12. So we started with our ELA. For ELA, we were going to read the original version, or not the original, because actually Yeshen is the first Cinderella story that has been documented. So we were going to read the Cinderella story that most students know and practice spelling and go over summary and key details and also recall Adelita and all that stuff. So I went ahead and I did have words that I was going to show them as it relates to the story that they were going to read, and write those words down and read the Cinderella story and do a check-in and go over, what key details are and all that jazz. But this is a lesson that we really couldn't do because we no longer had access to K-12. So instead, we ended up doing another activity, which was 14 Cows for America, which is a story that I always like to read around this time of the year because it goes over the 9/11 attacks in a different way, where it shows a village in Kenya and how Kimeli goes and shares the story of what happened in 9/11 sometime after the events. And the Maasai decide to give 14 cows as a symbol of love and healing for the Americans, because to the Maasai, the cow means life. So it's a beautiful story if you've never read it. So we went ahead and did that. And then I gave the students an assignment on Microsoft Teams, which I'll show you in a minute, that they had to do. So in math, we were going to go ahead and go over a quiz for multiplication comparisons. But again, we didn't have access to K-12. So instead, I had the students go to Prodigy, and I created a multiplication comparisons assessment using our FSA standards in order for them to review those lessons that we had already been going over. And in science, we just reviewed the different, how scientists collect data, the scientific method. We went over each step again. And this is something that I still could do, because even though we lost access to K-12, this is something that we still had access to outside of K-12. And then I let the students know what JEXCHUM, that acronym that I showed you earlier, what it meant, because they no longer had access to the S's for Scientists book so that they could complete their Padlet assignment. So we also went over the different scientific tools, and the students took notes on these tools as well in their notebook. As you can see, I set it up for them and they took that notes so that they can continue and finish their Flipgrid assignment. And we started going over the metric system, because that is the system that scientists use all over the world. So we did a little bit of that, and the students took some notes on the metric system. And they were supposed to continue with this book, but they no longer had access to it. So we just answered these questions together based on the information that I shared with them in the lesson. So yeah, this is what they were supposed to do. But, I kind of had to change things last minute, keep thinking quickly on my toes. And then for social studies, they were going to learn about physical maps, which we still learned, and they took notes. And they were supposed to go ahead and read some books from K-12, like this one, but the books were no longer available. Good thing that Epic had 2 of the books available, so we still were able to answer some questions. Like, this is a book that was available on Epic, even though we no longer had it on K-12. Epic did have this book, so it was good. And this activity the students weren't able to do because of lack of access, since we didn't have K-12 anymore. Again, with this is learning thing, you just have to learn to quickly change things, because things can change suddenly, and be flexible and make sure you have a backup plan in a way. So then that Friday, we just went ahead, and as you can see, Friday they started with our morning meeting. They had enrichment, they have PE and enrichment. So then the lesson that I did with them that day was math. So we did a math problem of the day. We were supposed to go over multiples and factors and go over patterns and rules for a pattern. So this was supposed to be our lesson. But again, I just sent students to Prodigy to complete activities and problems in Prodigy. And then in ELA, we just continued reading and discussing 14 Cows for America. The students continued working on their assignment. And for social studies, like I said, this is one of the books that was in K-12. But the good thing is that Prodigy had it, so we continue to go over it, and this one as well, and take notes. So the other thing that I wanted to share with you is that we had a couple of great read alouds that we did throughout the week. So we had The Day You Begin by Jacqueline Woodson. We had Enemy Pie, which had a really great activity on Padlet to do with the students, by Derek Munson. It's a great way to get the students to get to know each other, and also learn to appreciate and get to build new friendships. And Our Classes of Family, which was a great book by Shannon Olson. Chrysanthemum by Kevin Henkes was a great book that I started with getting to know the students and appreciating our names. And from there, we read The Name Jar, which is a good connection with Chrysanthemum. This one is by Yang Suk Choi. And Your Name is a Song is a new book that I read this year by Jamila Tompkins Bigelow, which was amazing. So these 3 books as books that you can use at the beginning of the year to get the students know about their names and why they're important, why it's important to appreciate your name and pronounce it correctly and things like that. These are great books, and you could use these at any time of the year as well. And of course, 14 Cows for America, which was a lifesaver at the end of this week because of the change of plans. And we ended the week with this beautiful book, The Power of One, Every Act of Kindness Counts, which was a book that I saw recommended by Jen Jones on Instagram. And I quickly got a hold of it and read it to the students. And it was also a great connection to make with 14 Cows for America because The Power of one small village in Kenya brought great comfort to the American people at that time. So let me now take you to the Microsoft Teams assignments that I gave to the students. So this is the one about Yeshen that I just made for the students to write their answers. So I created it as a form that I then inserted in a Microsoft Teams assignment. And this was the one for the Adelita Mexican story so that we can continue going over those skills, even though we didn't have the K-12 access anymore. And then I made a 14 Cows for America response for the students to complete as an assignment. Like I said, Epic was a true lifesaver. This is where Chrysanthemum was, but this is also where I found the book, The Map Parts, and of course, the Physical Maps book that we ended up going over on our own. In Tumble Books is where I have the access to the animated and read version of Enemy Pie, and Tumble Books is something that our district provides for us. And Epic, again, is so amazing. So I suggest you just go to, I said Epic, I meant Prodigy, prodigygame.com. And they have a little video that tells you more about the game and how it works. For math, we also did some bell ringers that the district provided for us as a way to compensate for the fact that we didn't have K-12 anymore. And these were going over some really essential skills that we had already been teaching them for the week. In our Microsoft Teams, this is how the social sciences drawings, the directions that they had to do. And the one for the map was very similar. And where it says add work, it gives the students an option to connect or attach the picture. So I told them to take a picture of their drawings. And I also connected a resource to each of these assignments to help them with completing it. So this is showing them how to go ahead and set up their notebooks. So yeah, this is how my assignments looked for this week. And that is what we ended up doing for the second week of school, which was pretty topsy-turvy in a way since things had to quickly change on Thursday. And yeah, so today we just mostly focused on getting those assignments so the students knew exactly what to do, reviewing the skills that we were going over this week. I put all my assignments on Microsoft Teams and showed a vocabulary video at the end of the day on map skills. So yeah, it was a good day. It was great to see the kids. We met 5 different times today. Was it 5? Let me see. So morning meeting, math, ELA, and social studies. So 4 times. We met 4 times today because we don't have a science period on Fridays. So yeah, it's been a whirlwind trying to get everything, into like a flow. But I'm getting there. And because we're back to using the other curriculum that we had from last year, then I feel more comfortable. But if you'll excuse me, look who just walked in.
Hi,
everyone. It's Miss Guzman. She's here to pick me up because we have a Starbucks date.
We do.
It's a weekly thing that we're doing.
To de-stress.
To de-stress, and it's very much needed.
Yes.
But
especially this week.
Yes, especially this week. Oh boy. So I'm going to leave you for now and I'll see you next week. So if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought or any questions you may have. Also, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell for notifications so you don't miss any future videos. Yay. So I hope you have a beautiful, magical day. And don't forget to smile. Hello, dreamers, wishers, and magical thinkers. Thank you so much for making it to the very end of this video and for showing your support. If you'd like to subscribe, you can do so by clicking on my picture down here. You can also check out my latest videos here and here. Don't forget to believe in the magic that's inside you because you are capable of great things. See you next time.